In the intricate tapestry of 20th century history, few threads have woven as complex a tale as the term Bolshevik. The very word conjures a labyrinth of intrigue and upheaval. Emerging as a breakaway faction from the Russian Social Democratic Labour Party, these Bolsheviks officially came into their own in 1912. It was they who shouldered the mantle of the Russian Revolution in 1917, a seismic event that unseated the autocratic Tsarist regime and gave birth to the enigmatic entity we would come to know as the Soviet Union. In time, they rechristened themselves as the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, yet the moniker Bolshevik clung to them tenaciously, etching its mark on the pages of history for decades to come. This band of determined ideologues found themselves at the helm of one of the world's most formidable nations, standing unflinching through the tempest of a global conflagration. Their beliefs, cast in the fires of an unforgiving worldview, locked them in a protracted struggle of ideologies against the capitalist world. Origins. From its very inception, the Bolshevik movement pulsated with an unyielding ideology. Their doctrine, rooted in revolutionary Marxism, scorched the notions of private property and land ownership, casting a scornful gaze upon the pillars of capitalism, monarchy, nationalism, and religion. These, the Bolsheviks deemed, were the tools that powerful elites wielded to subjugate the masses, necessitating their overthrow. In their place, the Bolsheviks envisioned a world of shared ownership, where the laborers reaped the benefits, a future where equality, both in wealth and status, flourished, and the blights of poverty, warfare, and oppression were banished. This staggering vision struck a chord that reverberates even in our modern days. This fervent ideology found eloquent proponents in the likes of Vladimir Lenin, whose brilliance propelled the tenets of Soviet-style Marxism into the limelight during the early 20th century. Yet, within the nobility of their objectives, lurked a willingness to pay the blunt price on the altar of their beliefs. Evident as early as the 1900s, the Bolsheviks pursued financing through acts of robbery, actions that harmed those they purported to protect. In a fateful episode in June 1907, Bolsheviks ambushed a cash shipment in the Georgian city of Tiflis, leaving around 40 people dead, many of them innocent civilians. Though a drop in the ocean of future deeds, this brutal event foreshadowed the chilling path ahead. By 1917, the echoes of that robbery had faded, and the Bolsheviks had transformed into a formidable force, a catalyst for Marxist upheaval within a war-torn Russia. The spark they ignited set ablaze the edifice of the Tsarist regime, birthing the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic, RSFSR, amid a baptism of blood. In July 1918, the world watched as the deposed Tsar Nicholas II and his family, including his young son, faced a controversial execution at the hands of Bolshevik forces. A tempestuous storm brewed on the horizon, the Russian Civil War. As diverse factions converged in opposition to the nascent regime, the Bolsheviks plunged Russia into a maelstrom of death. By the war's end in 1923, a somber tally revealed a nation scarred by the loss of at least 7 million lives, some estimates placing it even higher at 12 million. Amid this tumult, the Bolsheviks tightened their grip on power, spearheading a campaign of repression and extermination known as the Red Terror. The newly formed Bolshevik secret police, a precursor to the infamous KGB, assumed a sinister role, purging ideological foes with ruthlessness. The slate was wiped clean of pre-revolution officials, anti-communists, landowners, business magnates, priests, anyone who could conceivably oppose the new regime. The slogan was stark: for the revolution to flourish, all counter-revolutionary forces must be vanquished. Collectivization. Having solidified their dominion, the Bolsheviks embarked upon the ambitious endeavor of erecting their communist utopia. Among the pivotal steps towards this lofty ideal was the sweeping collectivization of agricultural land. This bold strategy entailed wresting farmlands from private ownership and transferring control to the state, ostensibly representing the people. The core rationale was to preclude profit-seeking by private landholders and eradicate the uneven distribution of food that marred private systems. Instead, the government would preside over agriculture, purportedly ensuring that its bounty served the common good and that sustenance was apportioned equitably among the populace. Though collectivization remains an incendiary issue, with ongoing debates on its feasibility, its echoes still resonate in contemporary global discussions. However, the legacy is tarnished by a trail of death, spawned by Bolshevik attempts to implement it, that casts a grim shadow over such aspirations, seen notably in places like China and Cambodia. In the face of determined resistance from many peasants unwilling to relinquish their land, the Bolsheviks resorted to coercion. Those opposing collectivization were promptly branded enemies of the Soviet Union, of communism, and of society itself. Rural structures buckled as the Bolsheviks sought to remodel Russia in accordance with their newfound vision. Those who dared defy this transformation found themselves subjected to threats, abuse, imprisonment, or even death. The Orthodox Church, a potent symbol of resistance among peasants, became a focal point. Thousands of clergy were incarcerated or executed, leading to the near eradication of over 90% of Russia's Orthodox priests by 1940. The collectivization endeavor particularly targeted Kalaks, landowning peasants, although the term was often applied arbitrarily to anyone possessing more than Bolshevik authorities deemed fit. The Kalaks were designated class traitors, adversaries of the revolution, their alleged wealth seen as plunder obtained at the expense of the people. What followed was a campaign of seizure, dispossession, imprisonment, and murder, plunging these individuals into darkness. Rather than alleviate the suffering, the Bolshevik authorities intentionally compounded the agony. Ukrainian attempts to access state-controlled grain were met with harsh penalties. Internal travel restrictions incarcerated refugees within the most afflicted areas, deepening the catastrophe. The Holodomor, a term often synonymous with genocide, encapsulates not only the devastating outcome of Bolshevik policies, but also the calculated exacerbation of human misery. The scars of this tragedy continue to shape Ukraine's identity and collective memory, standing as a testament to Russia's historical abuses and foreshadowing disconcerting echoes in more recent times. The Gulag Archipelago. Not every victim of the Bolshevik regime met an immediate end. Among the most infamous instruments of Stalin's terror was the vast network of labor camps known as the Gulag. These sprawling compounds, scattered across the Soviet expanse, imprisoned millions of citizens from the 1930s to the 1950s. Inside their barbed wire confines, traditional criminals like murderers and rapists intermingled with political prisoners, those who were even suspected of opposing the regime, no matter how flimsy the evidence. The Gulag system cast a long shadow over Soviet society, engendering a climate of fear and suspicion. Hundreds of thousands of citizens, eager to curry favor with the authorities or spurred by genuine ideological fervor, turned into informants for the secret police. This pervasive atmosphere of paranoia rendered Soviet citizens ensnared in a web of trepidation, a constant dance of fear and feigned loyalty. The existence of the Gulag was not a secret, but its true horrors were unveiled by Alexander Solzhenitsyn in his seminal work, The Gulag Archipelago, published in 1973. Solzhenitsyn's narrative recounted his own 8-year ordeal within the Gulag after his arrest in 1945 for disparaging comments about Stalin made in a private letter to a friend. Through his words, we gain insight into the relentless anguish suffered by those who crossed paths with the Soviet regime. The gulags, for the most part, functioned as forced labor systems, where prisoners toiled exhausting hours on grueling tasks. The camps were often situated far from civilization, cloaked in the frigid embrace of Siberia. Consequently, the working conditions frequently proved lethal, fostering an environment akin to slavery, rife with abuse. Solzhenitsyn vividly describes the systematic degradation of female prisoners, subjected to humiliating parades before Gulag officials, who handpicked them as sexual slaves. Amidst the litany of suffering, hunger emerged as a constant companion for the prisoners. The rationed food was barely enough to sustain basic functionality, and withholding sustenance was a common form of punishment. The meager fare was of abysmal quality, with bread sometimes containing sawdust. Yet, even in such dire circumstances, the prisoners clung to their meager meals, relishing every morsel as if it were a precious gem. However, starvation and malnutrition took a devastating toll. Disease festered in the unsanitary conditions, while exposure claimed lives in Siberia's unrelenting cold. Work injuries were commonplace, and executions were deployed for those deemed too troublesome. While the exact death toll from the gulags is subject to debate, estimates range from 1 to 3 million deaths, with a current consensus around 1.5 million. These victims bore the physical and mental scars for the remainder of their lives. Stalin's successors eventually denounced the Gulag system and began dismantling it. Yet, critics highlight that vestiges of this brutal apparatus persisted in methods, practices, and locations even after its formal dissolution. The legacy of the gulags endures as a chilling reminder of humanity's capacity for cruelty, and how even governments enchanted by their visions of the future can transform the present into a landscape of unfathomable suffering. Thanks for watching the video, and if you found it informative, please like and subscribe to Time Capsule for similar content. We look forward to sharing more knowledge with you in the future. Until then, take care.